And to further unpack the situation, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Mohamed Osman, an international relations specialist. Welcome to Qnews, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Sir, what are the most concrete outcomes Egypt can realistically secure from Davos, deals, financing, or policy partnerships, and how do we measure success?
Again, thank you for having me, Rana. Always a pleasure to be with you. Of course, this is President El-Sisi's second participation in the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland. His last participation was back in 2015 when Egypt was beginning its developmental leap forward and was seeking a lot of foreign investment, and this is what Egypt has achieved over the past 10 years. However, this time, President El-Sisi participates in Davos in substantially different circumstances, at a time where the region is facing existential threats, existential security challenges, existential political challenges, geopolitical challenges as well, with countries like Israel, for example, aspiring for expansionism on the expense of the sovereignty of other states in the region. And of course, the region has been consumed by acts of unilateralism lately that contravene international law. So President El-Sisi goes to Davos in order to to be one of the reasonable voices out of the regional heavyweights of the Middle East that will advocate for regional stability and for common cooperation and dialogue for global security at this point. We know that the Middle East will be one of the pressing issues that will be discussed during the Davos Forum this year. It is one of the main areas of focus due to its geopolitical implications and its economic implications as well on the global economy and on international trade. So Egypt, of course, with its centrality in the region, it intersects with many of those fires. It intersects with Gaza, it intersects with the security of the Red Sea, security of international waterways in the region like the Suez Canal and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. So I think Egypt will be focusing on that, and President El-Sisi will focus on that, also on his upcoming bilateral meeting with President Trump. Egypt also will naturally work on attempting to attract more investments in this global forum that witnesses the participation of all of the business tycoons of the world from various sectors. Egypt has a growing and an attractive economy that is susceptible to attracting even more FDIs at this point, and Egypt will certainly try to take advantage of President El-Sisi's participation in the economic forum in order to achieve as much as possible.
Dr. Osman, how do you read President Fattah el-Sisi's meetings during the Davos, of course, convention from your own perspective and point of view? And I know it's an early question, but still, I think Egypt weighs a lot in the region and is in the middle of course, as you mentioned, geopolitical, everything that's taking place in the region, what's going on, Israel's pressure on everything. How do you read his participation, and how do you read what's going to take place?
President El-Sisi,
and his meeting, of course, on top of all, with U.S. President Donald Trump.
I think the main focus of the Egyptian president's participation at Davos this year is his meeting with President Trump. Not only because this will only they both will speak about and discuss the bilateral relations, strategic partnership between both countries, but also because they will discuss issues of common interest, issues that both the United States and Egypt are heavily involved in. Let's not forget, Rama, that President Trump is supposed to announce the launch of his Board of Peace in Davos on Thursday, and Egypt has been invited to become a member. The Egyptian President El-Sisi, has been invited to be a member of this board, along with about 58 other countries that were invited. And also Egypt and the Board of Peace, of course, will be the overarching entity that will supervise the implementation of the Gaza Agreement, along with the Executive Council and with the Palestinian National Committee in Gaza. So President El-Sisi, and of course Egypt played a central role of all of this. Egypt played a central role even in reaching these understandings and this agreement on Gaza. So President Al-Sisi will have a lot to discuss with President Trump about the implementation of the Trump plan in Gaza, the Sharm el-Sheikh agreement, and also about the implementation specifically of phase 2 of the agreement. Israel has been laying obstructions and hurdles along the way over the past 3 months that has prevented the implementation of key provisions of the Trump plan. However, now I think that since the U.S. is much more interested now in the activation and implementation of the second phase and taking active steps, actual steps, executive steps on the ground in that direction, I think that President Al-Sisi will be very interested in trying to push the United States in that direction through his discussions with President Donald Trump. Also, one of the other pressing issues that I think that will be on the top of the agenda is the situation in Sudan. Both Egypt and the United States, along with Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, constitute the quartet, which is responsible for the mediation between the warring parties in Sudan. Egypt is very interested in ending the war in Sudan and in starting a political process that will end the civil war over there. The United States can play a pivotal role in actuating this and making it happen on the ground and realizing this on the ground. So I think President Al-Sisi will push in that direction. And definitely the issue of the Nile waters and the illegal dam that was built by Ethiopia, the Renaissance Dam, over the past years, will be a subject of discussion. President Trump once again offered to attempt to mediate a deal between Egypt and Ethiopia. Egypt now has welcomed the U.S. initiative in principle. However, they will need to discuss it even further and discuss whether Ethiopia is ready to positively interact with this American initiative or not.
Sir, from an investor's lenses, which free forms or signals would most improve confidence in Egypt? Currency stability, inflation, or the business climate?
I think that the Egyptian economy has substantially improved over the past couple of years. The inflation has declined substantially. Foreign currency is accessible and is present in Egyptian banks. Egypt's dollar income has increased as of late due to the increase in remittances, the boom in the tourism industry as of late, especially after the opening and the inauguration of the Grand Egyptian Museum, and also the Suez Canal after the war ended in Gaza and the Houthis halted the disruption of maritime navigation in the Straits of Bab el-Mandeb. Traffic has returned to the Suez Canal, so basically it has become one of the prime sources of income to Egypt. And Egypt also has attracted multiple investments from various sources over the years. Europe has, the European countries have invested substantially in the Egyptian economy. Fellow Arab Gulf states have invested substantially in the Egyptian economy. China and India and Russia also have invested in certain major sectors in the Egyptian economy. So Egypt is attracting a lot of investments, and definitely the Egyptian market is ripe for more and more FDIs in the very near future.
It's so we can say that Egypt has become or is becoming a main hub attraction for investments.
Definitely.
How does Egypt's regional diplomatic role, especially on Gaza and Red Sea security, translate into economic value or lower risk premiums, sir?
Of course, this stability in the Middle East is tied directly to the economic welfare of Egypt and the region. In the latest wave of hostilities in the war in Gaza, which spilled over into Lebanon and eventually even into Iran, we have seen how when the region was set on fire basically over the past 2 years, it substantially affected the global economy, not only the region's economy, due to the disruption of maritime traffic and international trade routes that pass through the region, and also due to increases in energy prices during the war with Iran. So basically, any instability in the region does not serve the global economy, and any instability in the region also harms naturally the economies of the countries in the region. So I think Egypt is advocating for that. Egypt, for example, is opposing Israel's moves in the Horn of Africa in coordination with countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries under the umbrella of the Arab League and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, because they know that the Israeli designs in supporting the or investing in the partition and the dismemberment, basically, of an Arab country like Somalia, for example, will have its very, very negative ramifications on the security of the southern Red Sea region, which is one of the prime passageways of international trade, for example. So Egyptian diplomacy and Egypt's foreign policy agenda seeks to preserve the unity of countries, seeks to secure international trade routes, and seeks to uphold international law. And all of this, of course, serves for a more stable international economy.
Sir, what sectors are most Davos ready for Egypt right now? Renewables and green hydrogen, logistics and ports, manufacturing, ICT, tourism, and why?
I think that some of those sectors already are booming in Egypt. The tourism sector is booming and is ripe for more investment.
Which sector is booming, sorry, sir?
The tourism industry, for example. And Egypt also has invested substantially in the production of green hydrogen and in the in investment in clean energy in general. Egypt's energy markets also are very ripe for investment, especially in the gas and oil sectors. Many untapped natural resources that can be explored and can attract major investments. So we have a multitude of sectors in the Egyptian economy that can attract even more FDIs. Egypt has about over 150 or 160 billion dollars of FDI stocks, and I think this figure can be multiplied over the years if the marketing is done in the correct way.
How important is Egypt's Suez Canal and transport hub narrative at a time of shifting shipping routes? And what needs to happen to sustain a recovery, sir?
12% of the world's trade passes through the Suez Canal, and also 22% of the tanker oil tanker trade or the tanker trade passes through the Suez Canal. So it is an instrumental international waterway that has to be safeguarded. And any instability in the region, especially in the Bab el-Mandeb Straits in Yemen or in Somalia or any these parts of the Horn of Africa or the Southern Arabian Peninsula, definitely adversely affect stability and the security and the freedom of navigation in this area. Egypt is more than able to protect the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal is safe for maritime navigation. However, there are certain other areas that are connected to the Suez Canal, like the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, for example, and the entrance area of the Red Sea. It has been adversely affected by the latest wave of conflict in the Middle East. So basically, it's all interconnected, Rana. At the end of the day, the Suez Canal cannot be secured without securing the Red Sea and without securing the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Horn of Africa. And this is why Egypt is moving very assertively in that direction in order to preserve stability and block all attempts of acquiring unilateral hegemony in that part of the world, especially on the part of Israel, of course.
Dr. Egypt often pitches itself as a bridge between Africa and the Arab world and Europe. What particular initiatives could make that positioning more credible over the next 12 months, although I see it credible, sir?
Egypt, of course, is already a hub in several aspects when it comes to the region. Egypt, of course, is one of the most stable countries in the region. Egypt is also a regional power that enjoys the respect and the admiration of most of its regional partners and enjoys the trust and confidence of all of the regional stakeholders. Egypt also is invested in Arab-Arab cooperation and cementing Arab mechanisms at this point. And the same, of course, goes for Egypt's relationship with Africa. Economically, of course, Egypt is turning into an energy hub at this point, becoming one of the, especially in the field of natural gas. Egypt is now one of the main suppliers of energy. It's becoming one of the main suppliers of energy to countries like Lebanon and Syria at this point. So Egypt basically now is playing a very major role to attract more investment and to also be one of the pillars of stability in this region.
So we end up with Dr. Mohamed Osman by that Egypt is, of course, alluring to attracting more investments because of the safety and security in Egypt and stability on top of all, and that Egypt has played major roles in major situations and, of course, in major crises that took place in the region in the recent year, of course, in the past year at least. How do you read it? Okay, Dr. Mohamed Osman, an international relations specialist, thank you very much for joining us on Q News.